Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to office.com.pk. Dear students, this is your biology class and we are discussing about cell growth. We discussed about the mitotic and meiotic divisions in detail, and we also studied their importance for human body. How any kind of error during a cell division will affect the overall functioning of the body. We have discussed it in detail in the previous videos, so you can check them out. Today we are going to talk about the cell death. As the cell growth is programmed, it is already decided by nature that when a cell has to grow, when it has to multiply. In the same way, the death of the cell is programmed. Cell of an organism, they depend upon various extracellular and intracellular signals for their regulated and control activities. And those activities, you all know, include the cell division, the pattern formation, the differentiation of the cells. We have studied differentiation in the chapter of cell development. The differentiation means the conversion of cells into particular organs depending upon their functions. In the same way, morphogenesis, motility and movement of the cell, that is all regulated and controlled by various factors and various signals. So each cell's fate is decided already. That is what responsibility it has to take and how it will perform its duties inside the body and when it will die. You have heard that red blood cells have a life of 120 days. So after every 120 days, the cells, they are synthesized. New cells are synthesized. The old ones, what happens to the old ones? So nature has developed a system of cell death so that when a cell has completed its life, it will die and it will be removed from the body, or it will be consumed by other cells so that they are not toxic for healthier cells. So there are two types of cell deaths that are commonly observed. First is apoptosis and the second one is necrosis. If we talk about apoptosis first, then apoptosis is basically a programmed cell death. Means it is the type of death which is destined, means the cell has to die the natural death. So that is apoptosis. So programmed cell death will help in the proper control of multicellular development, which will lead to deletion of entire structure. Sometimes it happens that after the cell death, the entire structure is deleted. For example, the tail of human embryos, means when the humans are at embryo stage, they have a tail. So with the passage of time, when the embryo grows into a complete organism, the the tail, it will be diminished. Also there is tissue between the webbing like tissues between the fingers, like the fingers are connected together by web like structure. So that structure also it is removed as the embryo grows into a complete individual. So cell death will control the number of neurons as well, because it is mostly said, it is a theory, that the number of neurons are fixed for life for a particular organisms. They rarely multiply. So before birth, most of the neurons, they die, and the number of neurons that a particular individual has to keep, they are decided. So apoptosis is a programmed cell death. It is always going on in your body, and most of the time you don't know about it. So it is basically the physiological death. Means it is a part of your normal physiology. The normal functioning of human body requires that the cells, when they complete their life, they must be dead, either by killing or by suicide. So there are two methods by which cells die. The one is suicide, and the other one is murder. Now either the cell will commit suicide. Why it will commit suicide? Because there will be absence of some survival signals. For example, the cell is not receiving its nutrition, the cell is not receiving its proper oxygen supply, or its waste materials are not taken out of it, so it will become toxic, and ultimately, because its survival is limited, so it will commit suicide. You know, suicide is generally an adopted way for the people who don't find any other way to survive. So in the same way, the cells will commit suicide because they will not find any other way to survive. The second thing is the murder. The cells are murdered because of killing signals from their neighboring cells. So this internal program of events and sequence, basically internal programming and sequence of certain events which lead to morphological changes by which cell will commit suicide is known as apoptosis. So these changes will lead to apoptosis. So apoptosis basically means dropping off or falling off. The word apoptosis means dropping off or shedding. Basically what happens during apoptosis is that the dying cell, it will shrink. This is the most significant change that we observe when a cell has to undergo apoptosis. And it will condense, it will become thick and shrink, and ultimately it will split up. There will be splitting, and it will release small membrane bounded apoptotic bodies. Like for example, this is a cell, it will shrink and then it will release small fragments, and these are known as apoptotic bodies. These bodies will be membrane bounded. Now these will be phagocytized by other cells. The next important feature is that when a cell dies by apoptosis, it will not release its intracellular components. No release of intracellular components. Because the intracellular components, they are toxic. So if they will be released into the extracellular matrix, they will harm the other healthy cells. They will be damaging or deleterious to the neighboring cells. Now let us talk about the necrosis. unlike apoptosis, necrosis is basically the cell death due to injury or any kind of disease, tissue damage. It is a non-programmed cell death, and because it happens because of any disease or injury, this is the pathological. Apoptosis was physiological death and necrosis is pathological death due to any pathological or disease condition. In this case, the cell will swell, and ultimately the cell will swell, it will burst, and obviously if the cell will burst, its contents will be released in the extracellular matrix. Internal contents are released. They will damage the healthy cells. Obviously, the cell is already dying of certain disease. Okay, the cell has become toxic. When it will swell and it will burst, its contents will be released in the extracellular matrix, and because of this content, the neighboring cells will be damaged, and ultimately it will lead to inflammation, or you can say the spread of the disease. In this way, one cell will harm the other cell. The contents or the damaging contents from one cell, they will damage the healthier cells, and the inflammation or the disease, it will be more progressive, or it will proliferate. So this is all about chapter number 21. I hope the concepts are clear to all of you. If you have any questions, you can ask in the comment section. Till then, till the next video, in which we will talk about genetics and variations. Take care of yourself, keep studying and keep watching office.com.pk. Allah Hafiz.